welcome back to the Real American Podcast. I'm Jacques, and we're digging into the second episode, Slave of the Cobra Masters. When we last left off, Duke was in pretty big trouble, about to fight Giant Conan in the arena of sport. The episode opens, and Duke is being mind-controlled by Destro, whereas fake Conan is being mind-controlled by Cobra Commander. After doing the first episode, I've realized that it really sucks that you have to say Cobra Commander every time you mean Cobra Commander, and Cobra every time you mean Cobra. There's no way to shorten Cobra Commander's name. If he was a doctor, I guess he could be Dr. Commander or Mr. Commander. I feel like he probably has some kind of science degree from the Institute of Cobra Law. If you've seen the G.I. Joe movie, that's a pretty big spoiler, and if you haven't, you just hold that back. So we're just going to refer to him as Dr. Commander from now on to have it roll off the tongue a little easier. So Destro and Cobra Commander are controlling their two fighters with what look like Atari 2600 controllers, and I noticed something about the growls from fake Conan. This is the first instance where I really spotted maybe cutting corners as far as audio budget is concerned. I feel like a lot of sound effects get shared between Transformers and G.I. Joe and He-Man and Thundercats and Silverhawks and Brave Star and, the list goes on, right? Well, that's the end of the list, but it would go on. So it seemed like fake Conan's voice was the same as the growls from the original Incredible Hulk cartoon. Here, take a listen. Sounds a lot the same to me. I don't know. Make your own mind up, but I kind of like these moments. Like, I feel like a lot of the laser gun sounds are borrowed. I feel like a lot of the vehicle noises are borrowed. And it makes sense. I guess a lot of the same voice actors worked between the shows, and probably there was a lot of trading back and forth, and any corner that could be cut was probably a good move. So the two are battling it out, and it doesn't really make sense how they're being controlled by this, controller that has, 360 degrees of rotation and one button. Like there's not two joysticks, so I don't see how they can control looking up and down and really control it without individual limbs. Like it doesn't make that much sense, but I guess they're just assuming that children are really into controllers for video games, and this will be plenty for them, and they're not going to think about the logistics too hard, but it doesn't actually work.
I'm going to end it all just for that.
100,000 pieces of gold says you can't.
How do you plan to stop me?
By letting my unwilling gladiator fight his own battles.
Dr. Commander gets a little bit salty when Destro has Duke do an excellent move on fake Conan. Destro ups the stakes by betting Dr. Commander 100,000 pieces of gold that Duke will definitely win. I was curious how much money that actually is. So in 1983, gold was $383 per ounce. 16 ounces in a pound. 1 pound of gold is $6,128. 1 pound of gold holds 50 gold pieces. One piece of gold in 1983 is worth $122.56. Multiply that by 100,000 and you get $12,256,000. Adjust for inflation, $28,645,185.60. So a $30 million bet on this fight that is being run by these controllers. And this is really weird because Cobra Commander's so cheap and always complains about money, but he's willing to make a $30 million bet at kind of the drop of a hat. So I guess this ties right into what I was saying about him being really bad with money. He's super frugal and then suddenly $30 million bet. So the fight goes on. Duke, I can't help but notice, touches his headband, touches his head, and seems like there's moments where he has control of himself, and I don't know why he doesn't just slip the band off. It's not around his neck like in The Running Man. It's not going to blow up and pop his head off as far as I know. That would be a better way of doing it, frankly, having it attached to a little neck collar that has a grenade in it, but I guess that wouldn't be appropriate for the G.I. Joe audience. The show flashes back over to G.I. Joe headquarters, where the Doctor and some of the Joes are messing around with some of the red crystal that will be found in the Arctic Circle. It looks like he's just playing the claw machine, essentially, moving the crystals around for an unknown reason, because as far as I can tell, you just dump them into the container of the mass device and it works. But he's picking through it because I guess he has nothing else to do. He mentions it's going to take a few days, maybe a week, for them to build their own mass device, and that while he's doing that, the Joes are going to go on a fetch quest to find the three things. And the first one is the red crystal located in the Sea of Ice.
The first element we need is a radioactive crystal which can be found buried near the Arctic Circle, not far from a glacial expanse known as the Sea of Ice.
The show claims that the Sea of Ice is a location near the Arctic Circle. I looked it up, and the only thing I found was a painting by the German artist Caspar David Friedrich. It's a landscape depicting a shipwreck in the middle of a broken ice sheet. It's located in Germany right now. I'm sure it's just one of many fictional locations the show will utilize. Scooby-Dooby, yabba-dabba, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. We cut back to the B storyline, where Duke is finally laid out fake Conan, and he attempts to scale the owner's box to take a shot at Dr. Commander and Destro. They freeze him in place because he still has the mind control headband on, and there's kind of a comedic moment where Duke's frozen and fake Conan is frozen, about to hit him with a Macho Man double axe handle. Then a Cobra Trooper runs in with a telegram on paper. I think it's funny seeing paper get handed to people. Like, in this age of email, we kind of forgot that most things got printed out. There wasn't screens, and you couldn't send messages from point A to point B with the ease that you can now. I guess you could bring it up on a floppy disk, if you remember that.
Commander, a message.
Wait! This cannot be permitted! Oh, the world has refused to surrender to Cobra! People are volunteering to stand and fight against us to the bitter end!
Worse, our spies report G.I. Joe has learned about the three catalytic elements and is going after them. The sport can wait. We must have a strategy meeting.
This telegram has a lot of information on it. First of all, the world has decided to refuse Cobra and is not surrendering. Seeing the Eiffel Tower disappear was not enough to make all nations give up, surprisingly. Also, G.I. Joe has learned of the three elements and is attempting to build their own mass device. Dr. Commander says that the sport will have to wait, and it's time for a strategy meeting. Duke's left to try and rest and regroup, and some girl named Selena comes up to him and slips him a golden piece of Wrigley's spearmint gum, tells him that if he slips it underneath his headband, he'll be able to resist the mind control, but with a lot of pain involved. The first thing I thought was, slip it under there and pull the headband off. I don't see why you can't do that at any moment. I don't see why you can't do it right now, since no one is running his controller. Just take the headband off. It seems like he still has his wits and faculties about him. We shoot back to our A storyline, where Snowjob, Tripwire, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, one G.I. Joe who I assume is Blowtorch, but he's not wearing the right color scheme, but he has a flamethrower, and I don't remember anyone else having one, and another Joe wearing green that kind of is maybe just a Joe Trooper or another G.I. Joe that I don't remember, are all approaching the snow cave containing the red radioactive crystal. Snowjob shows his sexist colors by referring to Scarlet as Pretty Lady instead of using her name. All the other Joes get called by name. I've noticed that pretty consistently G.I. Joe has overtones of sexist behavior.
We got the coordinates cold, Pretty Lady. and I'm talking cold. No tracks in the snow. I'd say we got here before Cobra.
Then let's get those crystals and get out. I'm starting to identify with frozen food.
Major Blood is about an hour behind the Joes and is going to attempt to stop them from getting the crystal. He feels pretty confident that they have no chance of pulling off their mission. I don't know where his confidence comes from. In the 3 missions he tried to pull off in the first episode, 1 being attacking the airfield, 2 being capturing the mass device, and 3 being ambushing the Joes while disguised as Dr. Vandermeer. 2 out of 3 of these were complete failures, and the only success had nothing to do with his involvement.
Something in there bothers Snake Eyes, Tripwire.
And I know better than to doubt Snake Eyes' sixth sense, Scarlet.
The Joes are about to enter the cave containing the radioactive material when Snake Eyes gives a warning that he senses danger ahead. There is a whole crew of robot sentries waiting there. This seems way overcomplicated. Just have a tripwire and a bomb or some poison gas or anything that'll collapse the tunnel on top of them. Instead, they have fully functional artificial intelligence robots waiting for them. Poor use of Cobra's funding. So far, this episode has done a great job of jumping back and forth between the A and B storylines. A being the mass device and B being Duke's capture by Cobra. During the strategy meeting, Destro decides that there needs to be a show of force, and they contact the Russian premier, Ivan Volankov. In 1983, the real Russian premier was Nikolai Tekhanov. I was hoping that they'd use the real one, but I guess it makes sense not to do that. I've noticed that they don't ever mention the president by name. They just refer to him as the president, and instead of using the president, they have General Flagg as a stand-in. The president doesn't seem to interact with the Joes at all.
Citizens of the planet, evidently, our first demonstration of Cobra power wasn't sufficient to convince you of my purpose. This time, there will be no room for doubt. Premier Ivan Volankov of the Soviet Union, I have you and your Red Square battalions in my view, comrade. I hereby call upon you to order your entire military command to lay down its arms. You have 10 seconds to comply.
Dr. Commander gives the Russians 10 seconds to completely surrender and lay down all their arms. There is no time. Even if the Russian premier said, quick, everyone surrender, lay down your arms, I just don't think he could get the message to them in time. It's an unreasonable timetable. Even by kid logic, it's just not enough time. Cobra transports the entire Russian Red Square army to his arena of sport where they're instantly captured. He also takes all their vehicles and a whole pile of ICBMs. This means that Cobra has access to nuclear weapons. If they can overtake G.I. Joe's satellite within a matter of seconds, I'm sure they can crack the code on some Russian ICBMs. This means they're nuclear power. The mass device is maybe secondary. Even if they have any problems with it later on in the show, it seems like they could just use the nukes they captured to blackmail the world. Destro's kind of pissed that Dr. Commander used all of the catalytic elements up to transport the Russian army there. It seems fine. He just captured 4 nukes and an entire army. It seems like a good use of the device, but Destro's not feeling it. There's a little bickering back and forth, and Destro throws out the best insult of the episode, reptilian popinjay. I had to look this word up. I had no idea what it meant. Popinjay. Noun, a person given to vain, pretentious displays and empty chatter. Pretty good description of the commander.
Reptilian popinjay.
Dr. Commander also draws out the S's at the end of words in a pretty obscene manner, way more than I remember. I feel like at some point they probably dialed this back because it's annoying. It sounds like he's letting the air out of a basketball every time he finishes a sentence.
You'd be out in the rain watching your face rust.
He informs the remaining world leaders that he wants them all to meet him 24 hours from now on Tanu Island, which appears to be a real island. Tanu, village of the Hindi people, Queen Charlotte Island, Canada. So I guess that's a good meeting place for all leaders of the world. Or maybe it's a really inconvenient one. It is an island, probably small enough that it doesn't have any kind of airport or airstrip, and maybe causing little inconveniences is part of Cobra's master plan. Shooting back to our A storyline, we find the Joes entering the cave where they are immediately sealed inside by some lasers that are pointed above the doorway. Those lasers should be pointed at the Joes. This is a perfect opportunity to wipe out 5 members of the core team and give Major Blood his first true victory. Snowjob finishes off one of the robots with a single shot from his laser pistol. This pistol must be the shit. It does so much damage compared to what the other Joe's weapons do. It makes me wonder if it's like Chewbacca's bowcaster. The robots then target Snake Eye's laser rifle, and with one shot kind of melt it in his hands, which I don't think is possible. It seems like if the gun got hot enough to just melt, it would melt right to him. But maybe his ninja reflexes were fast enough that he dropped it before he took any damage? Next, Blowtorch tries to burn up one of the robots with his flamethrower, and it seems like this is a terrible plan inside a sealed cave. I'm no scientist, but I'm pretty sure that fire needs oxygen, and all that really should have accomplished is suffocating the Joes. Maybe they're into the Wim Hof breathing technique and they know how to cut down their air supply so that it'll work okay. But either way, it seems like just a bad move for the humans and a plus for the robots. They discover that if they move positions, the robots have to reprogram for about 8 seconds to discover their new location. The AI on these robots is pretty rudimentary and leads me to believe that all of that money being put into more traditional booby traps definitely would have worked better. The Joes finish off the rest of the robots, and Snake Eyes makes his way down the tunnel to go collect the radioactive element. Back in the arena of sport, the gladiatorial competition is coming to a close. Destro and Dr. Commander start to bicker a little bit about who's more useful to Cobra. Destro makes the point that he's the idea man and he built the mass device and Cobra Commander's just the money man. If Destro's willing to bet $30 million at the drop of a hat and Cobra Commander is the money man, that must mean that he's a billionaire. And all of his worries about money are kind of unfounded. I mean, I guess he has some pretty bad spending habits. You can see that the Cobra Arena is pretty gaudy. And all of the robotics that they build that aren't really up to par probably are pretty expensive. With like a little tiny bit of budgeting, I think Cobra would be just fine. But Dr. Commander can't seem to hold that together. During this argument, Duke slips the golden piece of Wrigley's spearmint gum underneath his headset and tries to make his escape. It shoots a big bolt of lightning up to the 2 controllers, and Dr. Commander and Destro get a nice shock, and Duke makes a run for it. He's heading down the hallway and tries to make his way up to the upper Snake Tower where all of the Cobra Viper gliders are located. This is the product placement for the episode. If you want to acquire your own Cobra glider, I took a look on eBay and you can get one for the low price of $999.99 or best offer. Duke is at the top of the tower and he's about to get blown away by a Cobra trooper when he's saved by Selena, who knocks the trooper unconscious and probably gives him a recessed skull fracture using what looks like Bam Bam's club from the Flintstones. There's not much mention of how or why Selena has access to the entire Cobra facility and also why she has the magic golden sticks of gum. It hasn't been explained yet, and I'm not going ahead in the series, but I kind of have this funny feeling like it never gets explained, and she's just a villager, but also these things that will move the plot forward are part of her character. I doubt that we'll ever see her after this first miniseries. Before Duke takes off, he gives her his special ring as a keepsake to remind her of him, I guess, and the fact that he's coming back to rescue her and all the slaves at some point. Instead of kissing him, she gives him a weird head lean on the arm. I'm not sure if this is because the G.I. Joe writers think that young adolescent males are right at that age when they're going to say, ew, kissing, gross, girls, stay out of my clubhouse, or Duke's more of a gentleman, or Selena's playing hard to get, but it definitely feels like a Fred Savage in the Princess Bride moment.
Is this a kissing book?
Duke jumps into a Viper glider and then makes his escape. Dr. Commander bursts into the room right after he's taken off the balcony and tells his troopers to go after him, you dolts. He then lets more air out of his basketball.
After him, you dolts! Hurry! Hurry!
Snake Eyes, running a giant claw machine, collects all of the red crystal they need. It kind of makes me wonder why Cobra didn't take all the red crystal the first time they came here. They went through all the trouble of getting these elements, but only took a portion of it. It seems like since they had all of this set up, they should have taken all of it so that there was no chance of this happening. And they're already running out of the elements, so it's another moment where Cobra's inability to plan ahead bites them in the ass. The other Joes blow the door and are attacked by Major Blood. They're getting pinned down by laser fire. They can't leave. Major Blood can't get in, so he decides to activate his fail-safe activator, which is an explosive charge in the tunnel built to kick up a radioactive cloud to give all the Joes cancer, and I guess they'll die soon after that. It seems like they could just have an explosive charge in there that's big enough to just kill all the Joes, but I guess he wants them to suffer. Scarlet tries to radio Snake Eyes to find out what's happening on his end of the tunnel. He doesn't respond, but if I remember correctly, he's either mute or he's taken a vow of silence. She seems really concerned that he's not responding, but he can't respond. So either they haven't established that he's mute yet, or he isn't, and I've just fabricated that, but I don't think so. As he's running out of the tunnel, Snake Eyes shoots the ceiling and drops a pane of safety glass to protect the other Joes from the incoming wave of radiation. Scarlet and Snake Eyes have a really nice Kirk and Spock from Wrath of Khan moment where she starts crying and they both touch hands on the glass and they realize that he's sacrificed himself to save all the other Joes, and the other Joes don't give a shit. They could care less. They're super ready to climb out the ladder in the ceiling. It seems like only Scarlet shows any real emotions, and this is maybe another example of G.I. Joe painting this different way of being between men and women, where all the men are sex-crazed, emotionless robots, and all the women are there to be objects and handle anything that would involve any emotions. And I remember this from at least G.I. Joe the movie, and I think other episodes where, like, all the women are prone to crying at those moments when you think one of the Joes is dead. All the Joes but Snake Eyes escape through a ladder in the ceiling, and Snake Eyes does a slow, Incredible Hulk trying to catch a ride walk back into the radioactive cave to die a horrible radiation death. Or maybe he's hopeful that it's gamma radiation and he will in fact be imbued with incredible strength. And that would be another opportunity to use that voiceover from earlier. Back again to our B storyline where we find Duke in the air, flying out on a glider being chased by an entire team of Viper gliders. There's some really nice animation in this scene. The camera perspective flies around Duke in a 360 arc that looks really great. One of the Cobra gliders is tricked into running into a mountainside, and you see the pilot fall off scene. I have to assume that he's definitely dead. I don't see how you could survive that fall. So death count 1? Duke's doing pretty good, and he almost makes his escape, but He finally wipes out and hits a couple tree branches on his fall and falls directly into a Cobra Hiss tank, which he takes off of. It was a really fortunate fall. The area that he falls into, it looks like a national forest, or there's a lot of pine trees there and there's a swamp. It doesn't fit into where Cobra's base is. Cobra's base looks like it's in the desert and in the mountains, but just immediately he's in this forest, so just totally confused again about the locale of Cobra's base. Duke's doing pretty good in the tank, but finally he wipes out and falls into the swamp and starts to sink into what is quicksand or maybe just some really thick mud, and two Cobra troopers come up on him as he's going underneath, and instead of just shooting him, they just talk to each other about how they're really excited about the bonus they will be receiving, and they leave and just assume that it all goes to plan and that Duke does not find his way out. Unfortunately for them, Duke finds a vine and climbs his way out.
He's had it. There'll be a bonus for all of us.
The next thing that happens is he walks off into the woods, and it's a little bit sketchy how this happens, but he's suddenly on a medevac helicopter and he's heading right back to G.I. Joe headquarters. So he walked his way out of whatever forest this is, I guess. He doesn't have any kind of tracking chip on him because they would have already used it. One of the medical technicians named Cover Girl is pretty concerned that Duke's not going to make it, but the head doctor says he is no ordinary man. And I don't know if that means that he's been altered and he's like a genetic experiment, or he's just like a real good specimen. I kind of took it to mean that, but he seems kind of like a Captain America type, to be completely honest. We reach the final scene of the episode, Tanu Island, with all the leaders of the world, with the exception of the United States. The US president sends an appointee, General Flagg. This seems like a great idea. It's obviously a trap. Something bad is obviously going to happen. I think they all should send appointees, or just stand-ins, just fake leaders, because there's no way that Cobra's going to talk this out. It took a little bit of work to figure this out. I counted it up on multiple screens, but it seems like there's about 25 leaders in frame for the entire world. Currently, the world is comprised of 196 countries. Minus 25 leaves 171 countries not accounted for. I guess maybe Cobra actually didn't mean all the leaders of the world, it just meant the good countries. That's kind of a dick move, really, to not invite the smaller countries to your summit, but I guess they just assume once they've taken out the superpowers, everyone else will fall into line.
The fate of your leaders will be yours if you continue to defy us. Surrender to the new Cobra Order or become our mindless slaves. The choice is yours.
The meeting never goes down. All the leaders are transported to Cobra's arena of sport by the mass device and are immediately outfitted with slave headbands. Now, all of the world's leaders, or at least of the good 25 countries that are on the top of the stack, are captured, with the exception of the United States, who just lost one shitty general. Finally, we flash to Duke, who is waking up after all of his injuries and hard times he had at Cobra headquarters. He doesn't remember where the headquarters is, and he doesn't remember anything that happened. He only remembers the beautiful face of Selena. So, pretty useless information. Duke is mostly just focused on pussy and not the task at hand, unfortunately. As far as my thoughts on the episode, I'm still enjoying myself. This episode, I loved how it jumped back and forth between the A and B storylines every time there was a commercial break or anytime anything climactic happened. I thought that was really effective. There's a lot of goofy moments and moments where you have to kind of suspend your logic center to enjoy the episode, but I think that's just going to be part of this whole experience watching all this stuff again. As far as things that I remembered from this episode, the only thing I have any memory of is still the arena of sport and that giant Conan figure. Everything else, pretty much a blank, so my memory is kind of batting about 4% as far as the series is concerned so far. So let's see if I can up my numbers as we go along. Hopefully you're enjoying the episode, and if you are, please write us a review. And if you're liking any of the music, then it's all composed by me, and you can check all of it out on my website. All right. See you guys next time. Yo, Joe.